Station Houston on 2, stand by. We're working through some connection issues.
We're standing by.
Station, this is Dan Hewitt with NASA PAO. How do you hear me?
And Dan and NASA PAO, we hear you loud and clear. How do you hear us?
I have you loud and clear. Thanks, Kjell. All right, we will kick things off. Welcome, everyone. Thanks to our Crew-4 astronauts for taking some time to answer questions before they get ready to begin their journey home. Quick logistics, reporters on the phone bridge, remember dial *1 to be added to the queue. And if you have a question on social media, use the hashtag #AskNASA. So before we jump in, I'm going to hand it off to Crew-4 Commander Kjell Lindgren of NASA for some quick opening comments. Take it away, Kjell.
Thank you so much, Dan. Well, here we are at the end of our expedition, the end of our space station mission. We launched in late April. We've been up here for almost 6 months, and we've had an extraordinary experience under Oleg and Samantha's leadership. We've done a lot of science, taken in some amazing views, but now we're excited to get home to our families. So we are immensely grateful to all of the people that were a part of this journey, folks that helped us get trained, our partners at SpaceX and NASA and at centers all over the world that prepared us for this mission. I think that we had a great experience up here. We got a lot of good work done, and we're excited to get home. So thanks to everybody that made that possible.
All right, and thank you, Kjell. We'll jump right over to the phone bridge. Again, *1 if you want to get in the queue to ask a question. Our first one will come from Marcia Dunn in the Associated Press. Marcia?
I'm wondering, I'm going to ask you the obligatory question. Besides family and friends, what are you looking forward to most about returning to Earth? And Samantha, I'm going to assume that might be a good espresso, but you tell me. And if each of you could answer, thank you.
I think you hit the nail on the head for most of the crew on the espressos anyway. But yeah, thanks for that question. I think for me, certainly some ice cream, some pizza, but above all, you nailed it. It's seeing family and friends when we get home. Our families make such big sacrifices for us to be able to come up here and do this amazing thing and, to benefit humanity. But getting back and seeing them, getting those first few hugs when we get back is really going to be awesome. Really looking forward to that.
I'd say besides family and friends and a good shower, I certainly look forward to the opportunity of spending time in nature and just enjoying all the sensations that a natural environment provides that I think are so important for our emotional well-being.
Yeah, I certainly concur with my crewmates here, family, friends, and good food.
And I'll join in. Probably a cold drink with ice in it, drinking from a glass or a mug, and some great coffee. Ice cream sounds really good. I'm actually taking notes from everybody here because it all sounds really great. But definitely looking forward to getting back home, getting back to our families, and just relaxing with everybody there.
All right, thanks, crew. Our next one will come from Elizabeth Howell, space.com. Elizabeth? All right, sounds like we might have lost Elizabeth. We'll jump now to Bill Harwood with CBS News. Bill?
Yeah, thank you very much, guys, for joining us. You got a fairly long transit, assuming you get to undock tomorrow and the weather cooperates. You've got a fairly long transit to splashdown. How challenging is that in a spacecraft the size of Crew Dragon? And what have previous Crew Dragon astronauts told you all about what to expect during reentry? How smooth is the ride? Are you expecting, the kind of G's you'll be pulling, that sort of thing? Thanks.
You know, I think that, thank you for the question. It sounds like maybe we'll have up to 20 hours during phasing to get back home for reentry. I think that we're all kind of looking forward to it. You know, it is definitely a smaller volume than we're used to here up on station, but we had about a 17-hour transit on our way up here. Everything was very new. For two of our crew, we were new to weightlessness. Now I think we've got a lot of experience in here, experience with weightlessness and living and working in space. And so to be back in that homey Crew Dragon volume, I think is going to actually be a lot of fun. And we're going to soak in, I mean, it's an opportunity, kind of a bonus opportunity to soak in the amazing views of the Earth as we're ready to get home.
Yeah, I think the other benefit is we actually like each other. So, well, I might be too presumptuous, but so having some time together without the busyness of the workday and things like that. So there'll certainly be things that we have to do and take care of on the way home. As far as what we've heard from other crew members, it sounds like it's a really smooth ride. You know, obviously we've been up here in microgravity for 6 months, so starting as we start feeling those G's come on, it's going to feel even more extreme than it would in a normal day. So, you know, I think that's going to be really exciting. I think seeing the plasma out the window is going to be really awesome. That orange glow as it starts setting in inside the cabin is really exciting. And then obviously getting under the main chutes and splashing down in either the Atlantic or the Gulf of Mexico is going to be awesome. So I think when that hatch pops open and we feel that first breath of humid air, it's going to be pretty refreshing. So we're definitely really looking forward to it.
All right, next up we have Gina Sinceri, ABC News. Gina?
This is for Bob Hines. Bob, what things surprised you about your stay on the space station, and what's the memory or the view that you're going to take back with you as most precious?
Yeah, thank you. That is a great question, and I think from the time that the countdown clock went to 0, I've been trying to do that all the way up here, you know, and during this entire mission is just kind of take in the special moments and kind of mentally imprint those on. The entire launch process and experience was one of those. Just that whole experience of coming off the pad, the acceleration, the immediate stop of the engines at staging, and then the gradual, absolutely insane acceleration to orbital speed, and then the instantaneous cutoff and we're in weightlessness. That whole experience is one of them. The other one is just the experience of looking out the cupola, especially getting to do it with my crewmates and sitting there and looking out the window and, you know, picking Waddy's brain on geology on what the heck am I looking at when I look out the window and what happened and what causes that. You know, but those are some of the really, really special times. Looking at, you know, watching sunsets, seeing the aurora. We've had some spectacular auroras since we've been up here. And then, you know, working with the teams on the ground, doing the problem solving and fixing things up here has been a lot of fun. And certainly the science that we're doing up here, you know, to just better things for, you know, not only us and furthering exploration, but also making things better back on Earth as well.
Okay, next up we have David Curley with the Discovery Channel. David?
Dan, is my audio clear?
Yeah, go ahead, David.
Thank you, sir. Dr. As a geologist who has worked on the planet for her entire career, what did you see, what did you learn looking down on Earth from a geologist's point of view? And I'm sure you've done plenty of camping expeditions. How did this one compare? Thank you.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you for the question. And yeah, so you mentioned that I am a geologist and spent most of my career working on the planet, but actually most of my research was on a different planet. So I have done most of my research and professional work looking at the geology of Mars. And we're able to use Earth as an analog to be able to actually go out to field sites, do some of the camping that you're talking about, and really get our hands on the rocks, and then be able to apply those principles principles and fundamental concepts to what we are able to observe about the surface of Mars. And so to be able to do that kind of remote sensing observations, be able to see Earth from essentially kind of a planetary perspective, particularly sites that, field sites that I have done work in the past, particularly in Death Valley, California area, being able to see that same kind of place where we've done ground truthing, remote ground truthing in situ work, and then be able to see it from a remote sensing orbital perspective and be able to marry those two has been really, really enriching and exciting for me.
Okay, next up, we're going to take 2 social media questions. This one's for Space Station Commander Samantha. This comes from the International Women's Air and Space Museum in Cleveland, Ohio, and they want to know, how would you compare your second mission to your first onboard station?
Well, first of all, hello to the friends in Cleveland, and I would say the first time the experience, especially at the beginning, feels quite overwhelming in terms of emotions that you feel, in terms of things that you learn, in terms of physical impressions. And so for me, looking back to my first space flight, it was sometimes a little bit of a blur in my memory. It felt, especially those first few weeks, felt confused in my memory. And I think that coming back for a second time, what I was really looking forward to, and I think that's also what happened, is the opportunity of living the experience again, but with, the experience of the first space flight, and so the ability of noticing many more details, committing them to memory, savoring every detail, every experience. And also I have to say, it's been amazing to watch and relive my experience as a first-time flighter through, first Wadian farmer, and then more recently, the other first-time flyers that joined us on board. And just reliving through them the excitement and also, if you want, the awkwardness of those first few days and weeks. And so, in a way, elaborate that experience from back then for myself as well.
All right, this next one comes from Eric on Twitter. This is for any crew member. What is the thing you'll miss the most about being in microgravity?
The thing that we will miss the most, I think all of us are going to miss being able to float. I mean, it's such a bizarre thing, and I think so amazing that our brains are able to adjust to it so quickly. I think when we get to space station, I know that I never really felt like I should be walking up here, and so the fact that you get used to floating so quickly, it's an amazing way to be able to get around. I think we'll miss floating and miss just the views, the opportunity when you're floating past a window to just look out and see Australia or Africa or the immensity of the ocean with clouds speckled across it. And it just freezes you, and you just want to you stare at it for a little while and just try to comprehend it. And I think we're all going to miss that.
Okay, going back to our phone bridge now, we'll go to Russell Pounds with Pacific Rim Media. Russell?
Good morning. I'm calling from Alaska today, and this is for Dr. Lindgren. And my question is about medical research. Is there an experiment you worked on during this mission that you think may be of most benefit or most interesting to those of us back here on Earth? Thanks.
Thank you for that question. I think that's one of the really remarkable things about the space station is that it is not just dedicated to a single line of science, but is, we have combustion science, basic science, physics, astrophysics, and we're doing biological or medical research up here as well, and really a whole suite of it. Some of the experiments that I really enjoyed working on and I'm particularly interested in are, we had a project on immunosenescence, so really looking at the aging process of immune cells to better understand the immune system dysfunction that we see in astronauts here on orbit. So we see some immune hyperactivity and some immune system depression. And so truly understanding that at the cellular level, that was a lot of fun to participate in, to be a part of, and to conduct that research up here for the amazing team back on the Earth. We've had other projects that are using electron microscopes. We are the subjects of a lot of studies as well, and so it's really interesting, and we're very hopeful that a lot of that leads to improvements in diagnosis and therapeutics back on Earth.
Okay, next up on our phone bridge, we have Mark Carreau with Aviation Week and Space Technology. Mark?
Thank you. My question's for Dr. Lindgren and Samantha Cristoforetti. Each of you flew on the space station previously, and I wonder how you might describe or assess the structural integrity and day-to-day function of the station at this point.
That's an interesting question, and certainly I think as soon as we arrived a few months ago, we were struck by the increase of activity and the sheer amount of equipment that is installed on space station. It's visibly more crowded. If you just look at it and you don't know what's going on, it seems like a lot of clutter, but that clutter really stands for additional equipment that has been installed. So in terms of science, there's a lot more investigation opportunities on board now than there were 7 years ago. I think Kjell already mentioned the scanning electron microscope. We've got 3D printers. We've got all kinds of facilities, either to gather samples and data for further analysis on the ground, but also for analysis and measurements on orbit. And that was very much less the case 7 years ago. There is also a strong effort to use space station as a platform for maturing exploration technologies, especially when life support is concerned. So there is a whole slew of ECLS, like life support technology demos that are running on space station. Again, something new. We have a second toilet with a whole new toilet stall that we didn't have back then that is due to become operational soon. And so it's an ever busier space station.
Okay, next up, I think we have a reconnected Elizabeth Howell with Space.com. How do you hear us, Elizabeth?
I hear you fine. You hear me?
Gotcha. Go ahead.
Fantastic. Thanks, everybody, for all your help today. This question is first directed to Jessica, but I'd also like to hear from everybody. Can you talk about how the ISS is a springboard for moon research, particularly regarding the Artemis program? Thank you.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you for the question. It is a really important part of what we are doing up here, and a really exciting part of what we are able to do up here, using the International Space Station as a test bed for future exploration. So that looks like many different things. Samantha has mentioned a couple of them, looking at technologies as it relates to life support and how we can progress those technologies in order to support future exploration. We have experiments like X-Roots, which is investigating means of growing plants and growing crops on a larger scale without soil, so without the overhead in terms of volume, mass, and containment that comes with soil, that will have really important applications and implications for future exploration. We also are looking into some of the effects of human spaceflight on the human body and the human brain. So looking into cognitive effects as well as physiological ones. And we are looking into ways to protect against some of the hazards that are associated with some of this exploration. For example, of course, radiation is one of the biggest factors that needs to be mitigated as we move forward. And so we're looking into different means of protecting against radiation. AstroRad is an experiment, a test that we are conducting up here, where there's a vest that we can wear as crew members on board that would facilitate us to be able to continue operating on station, continue with our science or whatever maintenance is being completed during a solar radiation event. So we're looking at how effective that vest is, and then we're also going to be sending that vest up on Artemis 1. So coming up here shortly, that vest will be going up on the mannequin on Artemis 1, and we'll be able to compare that data with the experience of actually wearing it here on ISS. So many examples of all of the ways that the ISS is really enabling us to further technologies and understanding that will enable us to go further into the solar system.
Okay, next up we have Marvin Marshall with the Nighttime News Space Report. Marvin?
Hi, good morning. My name is Marvin Marshall from the Nighttime News Space Report on Twitch.tv. This question is for all of you. When you return home here soon and think about looking outside the International Space Station, what will each of your most memorable, city or natural occurrence that you witnessed from orbit be? And thank you for everything, and we look forward to seeing you all back home shortly.
Thank you for the question. Yeah, looking out the window, of course, is just essential to the experience of being here in low Earth orbit. And I think all of us really enjoy looking back and looking at places where we've lived and worked, where we have friends and family. For me, there's a really cool pass that starts in the northwest and flies over Colorado, where I spent much of my undergrad and graduate school years and medical school years. I have friends and family there, and that continues on down over Houston, where my family lives now. So that's a really special pass. And then there's another pass that goes over Colorado and up to Minnesota, where I trained in emergency medicine. So those are really special. But I agree with Bob. The aurora, for me, it's spectacular, ethereal, and something that I'd love to see on the Earth sometime. But seeing it from space, flying through it, is absolutely incredible.
Yeah, I totally agree. I've got a pass, my pass, right? But I moved around a lot as a kid, and so I have a lot of those kinds of places as well. But there's one that kind of goes up just off the East Coast, and then it goes over, and then it actually touches Europe too, where there's a couple places that I've lived over there. So that's one pretty big epic pass. And during the right time of year, there's a little bit of the aurora borealis in the top end of that orbit as well. So it's pretty spectacular. But it's hard to pick just one. I think, when I'm asked questions like that, it's not just one. It's the whole idea of looking out the window, and every time, even if you fly over the same spot, it's different. The weather patterns are different, different time of year, the colors change. If there's a drought or lots of rain, that just changes the look of everything. All the surface processes that are going on all around the world are just absolutely amazing, and it just never gets old. Like, you never see the same thing twice. And so I think one of the cool things we get is this global perspective of how everything is interacting with everything else. We can see sands being blown off the Sahara, and then you start witnessing those coming into the Gulf of Mexico and then getting blown over the U.S. And so you can see stuff like that, and you can see all those different processes going together. And to me, it's the way that system of systems interact is just really, really neat.
All right, our next question comes from Manuel Mazzanti with Debate. Manuel?
Hi, how are you? Thank you so much, and congratulations to the four of you on a successful mission. I cover the space program in Spanish, and this is a question for Kjell, because I know that a few days ago, you had the chance to talk to Argentinian students in a base in Antarctica. So it would be your experience, even considering an interesting situation that you're talking from an isolated place like ISS, another isolated place like Antarctica. Gracias.
Thank you. That was a really remarkable experience, and to have, as you mentioned, that shared experience of living in a relatively isolated area, seeing the same faces every day, and so sharing that kind of common experience. And I think that's one really powerful thing about being up here is that ability to connect and communicate with places all over the world, and to share the experience, to share the views that we have up here. It is absolutely amazing seeing the space station, getting to live and work here. An absolute privilege to be a part of this team that has joined countries and nations all over the world to build this remarkable orbital platform, and to see what we're able to do as an international community working towards towards peaceful means, and what we are able to accomplish. And to be able to share that, demonstrate that to the world, I think is very powerful. And being able to communicate with students, not just in a different country or continent, but in Antarctica, in an Antarctic base, was a really special experience for me, and I hope the students had a great time with it as well.
Okay, getting towards the end of our window, we've got time for a couple more. We'll go to Sophie Sanchez with Cosmics Chicago. Sophie?
Good morning from Chicago. Last month, Samantha, you shared a video about edible insects, and it opened a lot of conversation about food sustainability here on Earth and in space. I was wondering if you can share what future space food tech you're working on in the space station that you're surprised by. And Jessica, you mentioned X roots. Have you found space gardening easier or harder in space than it was here on Earth? Thank you.
Yeah, I think he's talking about the edible insects.
Yeah, so thanks for that question. Yeah, I shared that video about edible insects because one of the topics that I really wanted to communicate about from this very unique vantage point of the space station is the topic of biodiversity, landscape conservation, and how that connects with food security, which is obviously an important topic on Earth. I see here on space station as well, right? When our cargo vehicles get delayed, food security all of a sudden becomes a topic also for crews on the International Space Station. But certainly overall for our spaceship Earth and our 7 billion person crew on our spaceship Earth, that's an important topic. And some people who are experts on this matter suggest that one of, a piece of the solution might be also considering insects as sources of valuable protein, which is something that is very much part of the customs and diets of a couple of billion people on the planet. But it's certainly quite foreign to the majority of humans, and it might just be something to consider going forward.
And to answer your question about space gardening, I have set a pretty low bar in terms of my gardening capabilities on Earth. So I have learned a lot being able to exercise my green thumb here on board, and I'm so grateful for the amazing team of people on the ground who help walk us through everything that we need to be successful in terms of growing crops up here. It's been awesome to be able to walk into the Columbus module and smell the smell of leaves growing, of plants growing. It is really unique and just kind of really fulfilling and encouraging. And so being able to grow peas and tomatoes with our own two hands, if you will, has been really amazing. So we really appreciate all of the work of the scientists and all the people behind the scenes that allow us to enjoy that.
All right, well, that's going to take us to the end of our window. Thanks, everybody, for sending in your questions. Special thanks to Kjell, Samantha, Jessica, and Bob for taking a few minutes to talk to us. Everybody head over to nasa.gov/commercial-crew for the updates on their return and how you can follow their journey home. Thank you to Crew-4. We'll let you guys get back to work.
Station, this is Houston ACR. That concludes the event.
Thank you to all media participants. Station, we are now resuming operational audio communications.